Great. Yeah. No, and I think just to wrap up, to kind of touch on one last thing, the topic of this being log the fuck off and it being more or less a voluntary action of how to deal with the issue of social media, of taking yourself out of it. And, of course, what Amber is touching on, what Ben just said, of like, the campaigns and the projects that really are meaningful that we should be doing, like Medicare for All or labor organizing, being kind of, that's how we should be spending our time. But I'm wondering if you guys had thoughts on what should socialists be doing about social media? Like, what is our, like, I know, Ben, you've used the analogy before that, individual automobile ownership is not something that would translate over into socialism, that there's certain things that we would leave behind. And so I've understood what you've said so far is that social media should not move with us into socialism. Whether or not, of course, that's socialism more as the principles guiding us towards a better society, I guess. So I was wondering if you guys had thoughts on, reforms, or what do we actually do about social media aside from just getting off of it?
I'm actually not sure that there's something necessarily directly to do about it. And in making that point, I was just sort of I guess raising a hypothetical. I think that many people might not want to attack social media directly, but I think that they're more willing to see that the kind of social imperatives that lead people to be on social media will be less if we lived in a better society, right? If we weren't starved for some kind of community, if we weren't starved for social interaction, that we take in these bite-sized bits through social media because we don't have time or energy or communities to get it elsewhere. People are going to be online in that kind of situation. But in, I think, a better society where we had more free time, again, to sort of cultivate and develop human relationships in the real world, I think the kind of imperatives, the social compulsions behind social media would begin to evaporate a little bit.
I think also I would want to say that my social media quietism and departure from it for years, although I went back to Instagram for a month during quarantine because I was so starved for human contact, but now it's gone because now I can hang out with my friends again because I don't need it. I think that's the thing, is that I was thriving, so I didn't need it, and I didn't want it, and I got what I wanted out of it, which is that now if I write something, I can get people to read my work, but also I still do it using social media. I make Chapo do it for me. I outsource it. So I'm still using the platforms. I'm not look, there are no clean hands in a dirty world. And if you're not a professional writer or something, I mean, I highly recommend social media quietism. But really, the only reason I can do that and be glad I'm off there is because I'm doing well and I'm happy and I have friends and I have rewarding work and hobbies and, frankly, financial security. So I think talking prescriptively about people leaving social media and doing a mass exodus is kind of a backwards. It's a sort of an anarchist solution of we'll form our own. It's Goldman Sachs doesn't care if you raise chickens, and Capital doesn't care if you're not on its platforms. I recommend it for your attention span. If you have friends and people in your life, and Twitter doesn't abate some kind of aching loneliness that we feel in this era of aching loneliness. But it's not a political gesture to leave social media. It's just it helps me read more novels now, and I don't have to pay attention to really boring gossip from stupid, ugly people. And it's also like LinkedIn now too, because like when Twitter was new, and Matt remembers this, like it was actually appealing because it had this early era when people were just being like fucking weird and funny, and those people I think are still on there and still using the medium that way. But now it's got this entirely different like blue check kind of ecosystem to it. So it's like it's just even the things that I did like about it that I found creatively interesting are just sort of like I left because I wanted to and because I didn't need it. I didn't leave because I thought it was going to make the world a better place.
I would say that, yeah, there would be no social media in a socialist society because
We wouldn't want it.
we wouldn't need it.
Mm.
But if you're talking about like reforms in the near term, you know, like how do you reform police? How do you reform medical systems in an era when you don't have the power to actually overthrow capitalism? I would like to see those kind of things nationalized for the purpose of changing the attitude of the people who run them towards it. Because now, because it's a run for profit, the attitude is the more people clicking, the longer, the better, right? Because that's where the money is. I think the one overriding benefit of a nationalized internet and specifically nationalized social media platforms is they would ideally be operating from the principle of this is a unfortunate very social sin that we need to manage the way we do with like alcohol and cigarettes. And that would have its own, I mean, I don't know what it would look like, but just having that difference of at the top, as in the people administering it, would, I think, ameliorate some of the worst tendencies of it. You need to see it as a pathogen, as a social pathogen. You need to see it as something that is corrosive to any kind of society you're trying to build, not as something that's just a fucking slot machine punching out money for the stockholders.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a really good interview with David Bowie, like right when the internet started. It's so good. And he's like, I'm fascinated by the internet, by what's going to become and what it's going to be. And this is before anyone cared about it because it was just nerd shit. And the interviewer was like, yeah, but isn't it just like a tool? He's like, no, it's its own thing. It has its own logic. It can do amazing and terrible things. And I can't wait to see what they are. He wasn't wrong.
Indeed.
I think that's the best way to end this, and with Bowie always. Thank you all for jumping on the stream tonight. Thank you to everyone watching. Just another reminder that on Friday we have Bill Fletcher Jr. talking about Juneteenth, and on Saturday we have Sean Jacobs talking with Anna and Michael about all the stuff that's going on. So thank you again, and have a good night, everyone.
Night.
Thanks.
So.
Night.
Mm-hmm.